Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to hit like, follow, or subscribe on the platform that you're listening to us on. You can also check out my work at the loudest.com on the planet, knac.com, for exclusive hard rock and heavy metal interviews, live show coverage, album reviews, and more. My guest for episode 197 is singer-songwriter Richard T. Bear. He has a new album out under the moniker T. Bear called The Way of the World. It's the follow-up to his 2021 comeback album, Fresh Bear Tracks. And here's T. Bear himself to tell you more about it. If I knew absolutely nothing about T. Bear, how would you describe your music to me?
An oasis for your ears, mind, and soul.
I like that description. I also like your new album. It actually was quite impressive because I hadn't heard your music before. The new album is The Way of the World. It's out now through Quarto Valley Records. Described as a blues album, but it's so much more than that if you kind of want to get into that aspect of it. There it is right there.
It's got blues on it. It's got a slight hint of Latin jazz. It's got a bit of soul in it. It's got a good helping of Americana. It's a good dish served when you're hungry. It's the kind of thing that I had the pleasure of writing over COVID during the COVID time, and then after that. And what led up to it is a record called, and I don't know if you heard the one prior to this, called Fresh Bear Tracks. This one is what got me back into the music. I had taken a hiatus for a lot of years and got divorced, met a woman who I fell in love with. We got married. And kind of 2 years into our marriage, she said, I think you should play music again. I mean, I remember you playing music many, many years ago. And in fact, my ex was a guitar player in your band. And I think it'd be great if you put a band together and played around LA and had some fun again. And so I thought about it, and she nagged me a little bit more. And I was at a session. I was playing sessions, and I was at a session, and aside from my day job was I went to work at a lighting company called, oddly enough, Bear Lighting. And, I did that for a lot of years. And one of the reasons why she would date me was because I was the only musician she knew that had a day job. So, and Nina said, "Okay, let's have you go out and play some music." I was at a session at Robbie Krieger's studio. Robbie Krieger's a guitar player in Doors. He has a studio in Glendale, California. It was called Horse Latitudes, and I was doing a session for somebody's album, and he came by the studio that afternoon, and he saw me there, and he grabbed me at a break, and he says, "Hey man, I haven't seen you in a long time." And I said, "Yeah, I took a little bit of a hiatus." And he says, "Are you playing around town?" And I said, "Yeah, I got a cool band together with a couple of ex-Wings members and the E Street Horns, and we're having a lot of fun." So he said, "Well, how about bringing the band in here and playing here, and recording?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a record deal. I don't have deep pockets right now." And he said, "No, you need to make a record." So he kind of hawked me like Nina was hawking me. And he said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you the studio. You just come in and record, and you pay the engineer. Don't worry about the studio. I want you to make records again." So, Robbie was very generous. And he said, "Oh, yeah, there's one caveat. You got to let me play on it." I said, "Okay, deal." So Fresh Bear Tracks came to being. And Stephen Stills came to play on it. Edgar Winter came to play on it. Robbie Krieger, Tom Scott, Bent Montench from the Heartbreakers, Mike Finnegan, the great organist, the late organist. He's passed away. Great horns. Chuck Berghofer from the Wrecking Crew played upright bass. Hutch Hutchinson from Bonnie Raitt's band played bass. Bob Glob played bass. Will Lee played bass. I mean, everybody showed up, and the guys from Wings showed up to play on the record. And the record came out during COVID. It got 4 and 5 star reviews, and one of those songs that Stephen Stills and I wrote called "Give It Up" went to #1 over in Europe in the Hit 100. And because of COVID, we couldn't go out and play and do anything. So the record went out that way. And there's a lot of people that know about it, and there's a lot of people that don't know about it. So I'm giving it a little push because it's really a great record as well. And the bittersweet, heartbreaking story is the woman that I married, Nina, and the last song on the album is called Nina's Song. Just before I finished making the record, she was diagnosed stage 4 cancer and passed away, that year. And so the record's dedicated to her. This whole new career I have is dedicated to her. And, I love the fact that I'm able to make music again. I love music. It's really good for me. It's real positive and real authentic. And I kind of come from a retro area, a retro kind of vibe. And, when thinking about The Way of the World and making it, I thought to myself, I want to give an homage to the people that influenced me on this record. So the people that influenced me as I came up was Leon Russell. He was primary influence. And the next guy I'd put on the list that influenced me was Nicky Hopkins, the British keyboard player. And then Dr. John McRabenack, who I knew. And so, you sprinkle those guys together with the way I play, and that's why I got a lot of sessions and session work, and that's why I got a lot of records to play on, because I play kind of in that vibe. I'm not just playing like a British player or like a New Orleans player. I kind of play like a little bit of New York got involved in the Caribbean. So, because I grew up in the Caribbean and was born in New York. So I had that whole kind of flavor in my approach to, playing on things. So, that's kind of what led me into this new album. We did the first album, Fresh Bear Tracks. It's called Fresh because, I hadn't done things in so long, at Robbie's studio. And this album, The Way of the World, was done in-house. It was at Lawrence Juber's home, and I did it in his studio. And also a couple of tracks at J.J. Blair's house. And it was great to do home recordings, and it was amazing because I would sit down with a piano and play to a click track and sing kind of live to it. And then Lawrence Juber, a day later or later that day, would put a guitar on it. And then we'd send it over to Tony Bronigal, who produced Fresh Bear Tracks and co-produced The Way of the World album with Lawrence Juber, and send it over to his house. And he had his drums set up in his living room and recorded the track, playing against the click track and me. And then we'd send it out on the road to Hutch Hutchinson, who'd be out on the road, with Bonnie Raitt. He'd play it in a hotel room. He'd put his bass on it, And that's the way we made the record. We made the record like we really didn't track it except for Jewel and Breathe. Those were the 2 tracks that were cut live, one take, live vocal, done. And that was over at JJ's house.
So why don't we talk about a couple of the songs from the album? Why don't we talk the lead track, The Way of the World? I like the song myself. The World's Still Gonna Go.
Yeah, it sure is. That's an homage. Like I said, I did an homage to a lot of people on this record. And that track, the title track of the record, is an homage to Bob Dylan. And to me, who's, you know, one of the greatest songwriters of all time, he influenced me so much. The way he kind of took on the world, the times they are changing. You know, you listen to the lyrics in that, and then you look at the lyrics in The Way of the World. They fit perfectly together. It's the same kind of flow. It's the same kind of ebb and flow. What I've been doing on these last two records is I've been writing the lyrics first and doing the music second. So I'd start with a short story. I'd write a short story or thoughts in my head, and I just would jot down things that came to me and then put them to music. And so, you know, The Way of the World really is an homage to Bob Dylan. And I thought to myself, what would Bob write about now? You know, so that's the way that came about. Also had a little bit of John Prine influence in that as well, because he was kind of my moral and songwriting compass. And that's kind of why I wanted to be a songwriter. I'd seen him at an open mic night in 1971, and from then on, I wanted to be a songwriter.
Let's talk about one of the funner tracks on the album. Your Husband's Got a Gun reminds me of an old country trope, but it's not a country song per se.
It ain't country, but it's like, you know, it's kind of like, you know, guy slipping out the back door, you know. It's like, give me 4 steps. You know, there's all those classic rock songs. Ain't one way out, Lord, I'm going out that back door. You know, it's the blues, it's country, it's rock and roll, but it's really rock and roll and rock and blues, and it's really, you know, kind of. I've heard tales, not that I participated in any of these tales, but you know, like I like the line in the song where it goes, you know, he was dumber than dirt, so she thought, you know, but he smelled us when he got home, the air ripe with what we done. That's why I'm running from my life, from your husband and his gun. You know? So yeah, that's kind of a funny tongue-in-cheek kind of song, but it works really, really well. And on that track is a guy called John Woodhead, and with Lawrence Juber, and they trade licks. And John Woodhead was a guitar player in Leon Russell's band.
You have another single out. It's Change Will Do Me Good. If you want to tell me a little bit about that one.
Sure. That one actually on Easter Sunday went to #1 in the Hit 100 in Europe. And it was kind of funny because the last few months I've been touring with Walter Trout. I play keyboards with him, and he was #1 and #2 on that Hit 100. He has an album out called Broken. It's a great album, and the song Broken, he sings it as a duet with Beth Hart, and then he had another song called Bleed with a harmonica player, a great English harmonica player. And he was actually #1 and #2 in the chart. And I was coming up slowly in the chart. You know, I'd get to like 40, 15, 8, 6, 4 with A Change Will Do Me Good. And every week, you know, Walter would look at me and he'd say, I'm still #1. And then Easter Sunday, I was #1. He was #4. And I looked at Walter and I went, shit happens, Walter. You know, sorry, Wally. But you know, that's kind of fun stuff. Change Will Do Me Good is really all about, you know, getting complacent in our lives, and you know, and having to, you know, do the same things, repetition over and over and over again. And like you're sitting in the Barker 5 days a week. My lows are multiplying and my groove has sprung a leak, you know. And so I you know, those lyrics came real easy. And that's the homage to Bo Diddley. You know, it's Hey, Bo Diddley. You know, that's the groove. And no one put a Bo Diddley groove on a record in a long time. So I figured it was time to throw that one on.
Is the focus the European market for you? I know the US market is just such a shitty place to try to debut new music, but Europe seems to be quite receptive to it.
You know, they're really receptive over in Europe. They're rabid for new music, and they're rabid for this kind of music. And this would be my eighth or ninth solo album because I made a bunch of records back in the day before I took my hiatus. I was signed to RCA. I made a bunch of records for RCA. Then I moved to Europe and went to work at a record company as an executive, but they let me make records there. And I was very, very well received in Germany. And they really liked my stuff in Germany and in Belgium and in Holland, in France, Austria, and England, for that matter. I got very well known. And back in the day, I had a song called Sunshine Hotel, which was released on RCA, and it went to number 4 in the world. Oddly enough, the United States liked me, but they didn't quite, let it move up to where it was in the world charts. And that being said, you take a hiatus for 25 years and nobody remembers you at all. But in Europe, there are people that somewhat, were in love with the kind of stuff I played and the way I sang and the songs I wrote. So they've come back and brought all their friends with them, whether they knew me or not, all their kids with them, their grandkids with them. It's like, yeah, it's kind of fun.
The Way of the World and Fresh Bear tracks were released through Quarto Valley Records, a great blues label. How did you end up signing with them?
Well, I was playing with this band, like I said, this live band called Route 66. It was T-Bear and Route 66, and we had a residence in Los Angeles. Every Tuesday night, we played at a place called the Write-Off Room, and you had to be invited to play there. It was owned by a really good musician who did very well for himself, he and his wife, in commercial real estate. And so he had all this money that he was making, and he needed a way to write it off. So what do? Open a live music venue. That's a good way to lose money, And so we'd go and play his place kind of as a residency. And it got really popular, the venue, and we got really popular. There was always lines down the street, and people came, and there was this guy called Bruce Quarto who had this label called Quarto Valley Records, and his son told him about me. And what his son said was, he really talked more about my character versus the music, because and I'll break my anonymity. I have 41 years clean and sober, and I worked with a lot of recovering alcoholics and addicts in the music business, and started something way back in the day called MAPP, the Musicians Assistance Program, with another guy called Buddy Arnold, which then became MUSICARES, the charitable arm of the Grammys. So I sat on the board of those things, and every summer had a picnic called the Musicians Picnic, and everybody in the world would show up there. Eric Clapton played it for free. Eric Clapton played it. Matt and Duff from Guns N' Roses, Anthony Kiedis and the Chili Peppers. Everybody would come in Chicago, this one, that one, all the blues guys. And that's where I met Walter Trout. He was playing with Canned Heat at the time. It was 30 years ago. And so, kind of did all that. And when I got back into it and started playing music, Bruce Quarto's son said, "Oh, this is the real deal. This guy is really, he does a lot of stuff for a lot of people, and he's been charitable for the last 25 years. That's what he's been doing. And in fact, he's helped me and some friends of mine. And you got to come see this band, Dad. He's really like, it's the shit, So he came out and sat in the audience, and he blew his socks off. And I got offered another deal in Europe, and then he had me come to a meeting with all his label people that worked for him, and flew them in from the East Coast and met with him and had lunch with them. And I told them my thoughts and why I made Fresh Bear tracks and the story. And he said, they all signed up to work with you. They all want you on the label. So that's what happened. And that's how I got my record deal with Quarto. And it was great in many ways because, a lot of people on his label I knew kind of throughout the years. There's a bonus track on this record called Red Harvest. And if we could divert to that for a second, Paul Rodgers, the greatest probably rock and roll singer in England, from Free and Bad Company. He did some things with Quarto Valley Records. And when Russia invaded the Ukraine, I was writing a poem about it. I was watching it on CNN, and the poem was called Red Harvest, because the Ukraine, the country, is like the breadbasket for that area. They have grain, they have wheat, they have soybeans, they have sunflower oil, and they export it around the world. So they're really an agricultural country. And I thought to myself, well, not this year. This year it's going to be a red harvest. So I wrote the poem. I called Bruce Quarto. He loves the way I write. And I sent him the poem, and I said, I want to go in the studio with this. He said, have you put it to music? I said, I'm doing it right now. He said, well, could you sing me something? And I sang him something over the phone. And he went, oh, that's incredible. Let's go in the studio. So he gave me the green light. I went over to Lawrence Juber's. I called Leland Sklar, the bass player from the immediate family, great bass player. I got Tony Bronico, Lawrence Juber, and then I called David Crosby. And I said, Crosby, I need you to sing on this thing with me. And I know David because I played in Crosby, Stills and Nash on one of their records, did Southern Cross with them. And I was a roommate of Stephen Stills and played in his band. So I called Crosby and I said, I need you to sing on this, man. We're going to make this song, going to put it out this coming week. We got to get it out right away because I want to have a link to the Ukrainian Red Cross and the World Kitchen that are feeding everybody there. And I said, look, man, everybody's, running for the Polish border, women, children, grandparents, and the men are being left behind because they're being conscripted into the army. And we got to help these people. We got to help these people. And so Cross said, yeah, all right, let me listen to it. And I next day, nothing. The day after that, now the track is done and nothing. And so I call him up. I said, so can you come in and do this with us? And he says, I haven't listened to it yet. I'll do it over the weekend. And that was like 5 days later. And by coincidence, that night I get a call from a guy called Paul. And I had been speaking to my music attorney earlier in the day, whose name is Paul Quinn. He's a Brit. And this guy calls and says, hey, it's Paul. I want to sing on your record. And I said, you're not a singer. You're a fucking attorney. Stop breaking my balls. Stop taking the piss out of me. Do your lawyer shit. I'll do my music shit. And he's like, no, mate, I want to sing on your record. And I'm like, Come on now. No, he says, it's Paul Rodgers, the singer. I said, oh, I thought you were Paul Quinn, the lawyer. Sorry. So that's how it came to be. And he said, can I sing on this song? My wife, Cynthia, is Ukrainian, and my father, by the way, was born in Warsaw. His family came from Kiev in that area. So, I had a DNA interest in this, and so did Cynthia Rogers. And so Paul said, I want to do it. We sent him the tracks up in Pro Tools, sent him the stems. And a day later, he sang it. It was done, mixed by J.J. Blair, and we put it out. And that's the bonus on here. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I went with Bruce Quarto, because, he believes in things, and he'll greenlight some things. It's really nice that way.
I understand you currently tour with Walter Trout. Do you get an opportunity to perform the T-Bear material live?
Well, there's one spot in the middle of the show where the band walks off the stage and Walter leaves me alone. And he tells everybody about me. He gives a whole story about. He tells this story about me playing at a piano bar when I was younger, back in the day, and Joe Pesci coming in all the time, that actor, the famous actor. And Joe Pesci came in a few nights to see me, and I got kind of friendly with him. And I says, hey, Joe, why do you keep coming in? And Joe said, because you're the best fucking whorehouse piano player I ever heard. And so that's what Walter, that's the kind of pitch that Walter says. And you got to listen to this guy play. And I start to play, and I just do a blues thing. And he comes out and plays harmonica with me, and then he grabs his guitar, and then we kind of trade things back and forth. And then the band comes on, and it's not really my gig. It's a Walter Trout gig. But that being said, I think what's going to probably happen in the future is I may open for him. And do kind of a solo thing, like a keyboard thing, a solo piano opening thing. I'm doing that with, I'm going to do a few of those with some blues players coming up. And so, that'll be pretty good. I'll enjoy some of those shows. I'm doing some of those. And then I have my band in LA, and I go out and play with them. So that's kind of fun. And I hope to get to the East Coast with my band, because I got a smoking hot band.
Now, with your smoking hot band, is it still T-Bear in Route 66?
No, it's just T-Bear, and it's Lawrence Juber on guitar, the former Wings guitarist, Ricky Cortez, who played in John Mayall's band, on bass, Tony Bronigal, who played with Bonnie Raitt, Little Feat, Taj Mahal, Robert Cray, great drummer, and myself. So we have a quartet. It's really, really good.
Do you play just selections from throughout your career, or do you throw in some covers or whatnot?
We play mostly the things that I've recorded. And then we throw a couple of covers on, and we do them differently than people are normally, used to. And that's kind of fun. Like on the Fresh Bear tracks, we do a cover, the Zombie song, She's Not There. And we do it completely different than the Zombies. And, I have another cover that I recorded, and it's called Salty Dog. And that's a Procol Harum song. So we kind of do that one. A couple of other things that are fun. We do a lot of Mad Dogs and Englishman song. The Letter. We do it kind of Mad Dogs way. But mostly, I would say 90%, of the set is originals.
I'd like to hit the time machine if we could, to go back to 1978-ish. You signed
Mhm.
a deal with RCA for your debut album, Red, Hot, and Blue. It was produced by Jack Richardson, who did Bob Seger. You had a bunch of guests on that album, too. What do you remember about getting in the studio and recording that one?
I remember getting Jack Richardson because I was a huge, huge Guess Who fan, and he was their producer. He did all the Guess Who records. And like the Guess Who to me were Canadians' version of the Beatles. I mean, I loved them that much. I thought, those guys were like the cat's meow. I just loved them. And so and then he does Night Moves, the single for Seeger, and I went, oh, this is my guy. This guy understands songwriters. So we did that together. I did it in New York and also up in Toronto at his studio, Nimbus 9, and it came out great. It came out great. And I did a next record with him. I did a live record with him. Great guy, Jack Richardson.
Your early catalog from that time period, not available streaming. Is there a time and place this might be available for streaming or purchase in the future?
I would hope so. I mean, it's really some good records. When you consider some of the people that are on those records, um, and the way they came about, and the playing on it is superb, absolutely superb. I mean, so many great musicians on those records, and they sound really good. They sound really good. I hope that RCA re-releases some of that stuff. If I catch fire, I'm sure they're going to re-release some things. But oddly enough, the song Sunshine Hotel, which was a huge dance hit, even in the United States, they are still needle dropping and sampling all these DJs all over the world. I mean, I got an email from a guy over in Europe. He says, "Man, I want to do a version of Sunshine Hotel. Can you get me the rights?" So we're negotiating that, they play Sunshine Hotel in most discos around the world still. At night they'll drop that in the middle. They'll play it. They shuffle things against it.
Same year that you released your solo album, I saw that you appeared on Gene Simmons' solo album and Peter Criss's solo album. So how did you get that opportunity? Was it? I'm not sure. I don't think Kiss was on RCA, so there must have been another route.
No, they were on Casablanca, and I went back to almost the beginning with Kiss. I knew their manager, who was a Canadian guy called Bill Coyne. And what happened was they signed a band who were friend, and the lead singer was a friend of mine called Billy Squire, and from your neck of the woods. He was out in Boston. And then there was another band called Aerosmith that I was friendly with because I went to high school with Joey Kramer, the drummer, and Steven Tyler, whose real name is Tallarico. So we went to the same high school, and then when I hooked up with Billy Squire, he was in a band called Piper, and the Kiss management team managed them. And then what happened was they liked the way I wrote, they liked the way I played, and Bill Coyne and a guy called Sean Delaney, who was the brains, the creative brains behind Kiss. He was the guy that put him in the kabuki makeup and did all kinds of great stage effects and things like that with them. He would say to me, he said, I want you to start working with us. I want you to start ghostwriting with us. I want you to start arranging and doing things with the band. And they were getting bigger and bigger. And they had done Destroyer, and they had done the live thing at the Budokan and in Japan. And, I got together with Gene, and Gene really liked the way I wrote and liked the things I was coming up with. So he said, would you play on my solo album? I'm going to go do it in England. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And then Peter Criss went, well, if you're playing on his, I want you to play on mine. And so I didn't end up on Aces or anybody else's because I was, doing two of them as it was. And then Gene was dating Cher at the time. And it was like, she was over in England. She loved the way I wrote and the way I played. And she turns around and says, okay, it's time for you to write me some songs. And so I have this picture. I'll hold it up for you guys. That is
Nice.
Gene hiding behind the hat because no one could see his face in those days. That was the thing they did. And then Cher on the other side, and me a little buffed up. I think I must have had some Peruvian marching dust and a few whiskeys. So, I was a little lit in that picture. And then we made a really good record. And Peter Criss, I really liked the way he sang and did ballads and things like that. So I kind of put some flavor of T-Bear flavor on his record. And then Cher, I wrote her a couple of songs, and it was on her Take Me Home album, the ballad, which she did in her TV specials, on her music videos, a thing called Love and Pain. And it's a song that's on the Red Hot and Blue album called Pain in My Heart. And she says to this day, it's the best ballad she ever sang. So I'm really grateful to know her and give her a good song.
In 1980, you had the chance to work with your friend Billy Squire on The Tale of the Tape. Actually, a lot of big songs came off of that album. I'm pretty sure that was the one with the big beat, right?
Yeah, Billy and I were really good friends. I loved him. He's a great guy. I wish he would get back into it and kind of rock and roll us again, because he's a really good front man, a really good singer, and a very, very powerful rock and roll entity.
Did was that the time Bobby Chouinard was in the band as the drummer?
Yeah, Bobby was in the band. Funny story. I get a call from Bobby, may he rest in peace. I was living on the east side of Manhattan, and it was cold. It was like this really cold, wet end of November kind of rainstorm, and it was too warm to snow, but it was colder than shit, and just one of those nor'easters that were coming through. And he says, "Hey man, you got to get over here." I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, Billy's all drunk and stuff because that Piper lost their deal, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's threatening to jump out of the window, and he's completely drunk and out of control, and his girlfriend and I are here. You got to come over and make some sense to him." And I said, "Come on, man." He says, "No, he's opened the window. He's considering jump." I said, "All right." And I got on my motorcycle in this rainstorm and went all the way over to the west side. And he was in this building. I'd never been to his house. And I got to the address, and I looked up to see which window he was going to hang out of. And there was a window opening, but it was the second floor. I was like, I risked my life, and you were going to jump out of a second floor window that was only 8 feet above the street? I said, "I'll throw you out the fucking window now." But we were really, really good friends, really good friends. And he was playing in Ringo's band, in the All-Star band. And he was out here. They played the Greek Theater, and we hung out. I had a little boat at the time, and we all went out for lunch and hung out.
Bobby's nephew, Roger, owns a record store here in Massachusetts. He's also in a band called All Sinners, and I think he just acquired one of his uncle's drum kits recently.
Bobby was a great player. Bobby just laid it down, man. He had a really, he's one of the cats. I'm going to say this, and people might take umbrage with this, but he was kind of a version of Jim Keltner to me. And Jim Keltner is to me, Ringo and Jim Keltner are my favorite drummers. And wow, Bobby was right up there with him. He really could swing. He could, but he hit hard. He hit really, really hard. When those sticks didn't stand a chance in his hands. Don't hurt me anymore. Give me
Are you still doing any session work today, or do you have your hands?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've been working on a bunch of things. I've been working with Jack Douglas. Jack Douglas did Aerosmith records, the producer, Cheap Trick, Lou Reed, John Lennon, his last album. He was with him the night he was killed. And Jack Douglas loves to hire me to play on the records that he's doing, because he says you play like Nicky Hopkins, but you got a T-Bear feel, and I love that. And he's doing a lady named Kelly Cleo right now, and she's really, really good. And she lives, I think, in either Memphis or Nashville, and Jack Douglas has his own label right now. So he's recording stuff. Yeah, I still do sessions. And yeah, if you need a keyboard player, I'm your guy. It's that way. Contact this guy. He's my agent.
Well, before I let you go, I wanted to find out how you got your moniker T-Bear.
When I was signed to RCA, a lot of records that I was playing on, prior to Richard T. Bear, was my legal name, Gerstein, Richard Gerstein. Like Springsteen, Gerstein, right? And RCA said to me, well, we can't sign you as Richard Gerstein because Jews don't sell in the South. And I was like, what? I said, what about Springsteen? And they go, well, he's already, got a lock on things. So do you have any nicknames? And I said, yeah, I got a nickname, Bear. They said, okay, from now on, you're going to be Richard Bear. And I went, well, there is an Edward Bear in Canada, so I don't want to be Richard Bear. It's got to be something else. And they were like, I said, how about Richard T. Bear, the Bear? They went, okay, that'll work. And people would come up to me and they would say, well, what's the T stand for? And I would say, trustworthy. But I want to tell you one funny story that I think you'll enjoy. It's my homage to Leon Russell, and it's this song Jewel. I don't know if you listened to that one, but
yeah,
Jewel is not about Jewel the singer. It's not at all. People say, oh, you wrote a song about Jewel the singer. I said, no. It's not about her. It's about a girl in LA called Julie, who works for Lou Adler. You know who Lou Adler is, the producer?
Yes.
Well, for your peeps, Lou Adler produced the Mamas and the Papas, did all their hits. California Dream, Sunday. The Tapestry with Carole King did that album. He produced that. All the Cheech and Chong movies, he did all that. So he's kind of a legend in LA. And Julie was and still is his assistant. She's worked for him for like 39 years. So, after Nina passed, about a year later, I decided to go out on a date, and I met Julie, and I said, "You want to go out for dinner or something?" She goes, "Yeah, let's do that." And I said, "Okay." So she was telling me all about her job and all about Lou and this, that, and the other thing. And I said to her, I'm trying to make points, And I said to her, I said, so you got any nicknames? And she says, "Yeah, I just got a nickname, and it's Jewel." And I said, "Well, how did you get that?" She goes, "Well, my boss Lou goes to all the Laker games, and he sits in the first row right there. And next to him in the next seat is Jack Nicholson. And so Lou wasn't going to use some tickets for about a week or two because he was going somewhere. And he said, let's get these over to Jack Nicholson. He can use them and have somebody join him and sit next to him." So I drove all the way over in the middle of the rush hour to get him some tickets that Lou wasn't going to use. And I finally get there, and Jack says to me, "Julie, you're a jewel. And I'm going to call you Jewel from now on because you rode all the way over here, and went through all this LA traffic and shit. And you're a jewel from now on. So anytime I'm at your place or you come over here or we ever meet anywhere, I'm going to call you Jewel." So I said, "Well, that's a great name, Julie." She goes, "Yeah, it kind of fits. It's nice." I said, "Well, you know what? I'm going to write you a song." And she looked at me. I swear to God, she said, "You wouldn't be the first." I was like, "What?" She threw down. And I'm like, "You wouldn't be, okay, who wrote you a song?" And she goes, "J.D. Souther." And I went, "J.D. Souther? He's a great songwriter. He writes with the Eagles, right? That guy?" She goes, "Yeah, he wrote me a song. It's on his so-and-so album." And I picked up the album, that later that night when I went home, and I kind of looked at the songs, and I went like, it's a good song, but you know what? He could have written it about anybody. He could tell any girl in the world that was about her or this, that, and the other thing. And so I called her up and said, "I'm starting your song. I'll let you know when it's finished. But the difference is you're going to know it's about you." So the first line in the song is, "Are you a diamond or a precious gem? You got your nickname, Jewel, from your famous friend." So that kind of tells the story that, how she got the nickname Jewel. And then later on in the bridge, it says, "Come on, Julie, take a peek." So, I put her name in it, and that's how I write. I mean, it's kind of like that. It's kind of, this has been real fun for me. I really appreciate you having me on your show.
I appreciate you taking the time because I didn't know a lot about you. I certainly know more about you from my research, but I know more about you from doing this interview. And that's why I do these interviews, for me to learn more and for people that aren't familiar with the artist to learn more, because I think through the talking and the passion for your craft, people will hear the album differently.
Yeah, I think you're right. The more you learn about somebody, the better. And it's hard today because people are just downloading a single. They're not like going through getting the record and actually understanding the process of all these songs and how they fit together and why people made them. And the reason why I write songs and make records is because I want to have a relationship with people that have a relationship with music. People that love to look at, and unfortunately there aren't a lot of CD players, but they love to look at the insides of these things and see all these words and what do they mean and how did they come about. And it's like liner notes on a vinyl record. I used to love to read about how the record was made, who made the record, who played on it, where was it made, and what the artist and the lyrics, and that's really important. And I do in LA from 1 o'clock to 1:30 every Tuesday when I'm in LA and not on the road. I do a thing called Live from the Bear Cave on Facebook Live under T Bear, under Richard T Bear. And I play songs, new songs, things I'm writing. I talk about current events in the world, this day in history. And people from around the world are on that show. They chime in, and even if they can't see it live, they follow it later on. Because it's sitting there. And the other thing I did was a thing called the Bare Facts, and that's when I interview people that I've worked with throughout my life in music, and that's kind of fun, and that's on YouTube. And I want to get back into it. I want people to know who I am. I want to carry the flag for Leon Russell, for Dr. John, for Nicky Hopkins, for all the people that we've lost, and I want to write that way so that because it's the records that people get or that they download or the CDs or whatever, they're just like remastered, best of. They aren't making new records, they aren't writing new songs. So that's what I'm doing. I think it's really important to be authentic. It's really important to be real and genuine. And that's what I do. And there's great new music coming out. There really is. I mean, I think there's great new artists and great new music. I think there's a lot of shit, and you got to get through it. To me, there's it's 85% bullshit out there, and maybe 5% really good art. But that's the way it always was.
Well, you made a fan out of me with The Way of the World. It's out now through Quarto Valley Records, and T-Bear, glad we had the opportunity to talk about it today.
It's been a real pleasure to be on your show. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Once again, I want to thank T-Bear for coming on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out his latest album, The Way of the World, out now through Quarto Valley Records. Head over to your favorite music streaming platform, take a listen to the album. If you like what you hear, buy a physical copy, support the artist. For all things T-Bear, head over to his official Facebook page /T-Bear Tracks. I also want to thank John Lappin of Lappin Enterprises and Quarto Valley Records for making this interview possible. You've been great. I've been George Dionne. Discover your next favorite artist on the Rock is George podcast.